And all of a sudden, we were hit by a wind that literally shook the car. Then came the rain within seconds, and with the rain came hail. It was white all around us. We could just make out the lines. I managed to get a few shots off of Scar running in the storm, trying to get to cover. And you have like branches in the air. Everything is just a haze with this male line mane blowing everywhere. You can see the hail, like literally the ice balls falling through the sky.
Hello and welcome to Season 5 of the Viewfinders Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Graham Dargy. I'm a professional photographer here in Aberdeen in Scotland. To kick off this season of the show, I have a very special guest indeed. You just heard him talking about one of the countless unforgettable experiences he's had in his career, wildlife photographer and safari guide Marlon du Toit. I'll introduce Marlon in a minute, but first, here's a question. What's the difference between a good photographer and a great photographer? In a time where we all have great equipment, we all know the same techniques, and we can all more or less get to the same places, the difference must be what the photographer is thinking when they lift the camera, look through the viewfinder, and press the button. This is the show where we delve into the thoughts and experiences that shape some of the best photographers in the world, with the aim of inspiring you to take the next bold steps on your photography journey. And maybe we can just give you an hour off from thinking about the latest crisis we're all facing in this crazy world. Well, it's been a minute. How have you been? Wherever you are, I hope you're safe and well. Here in my corner of the world, I've been kind of busy. One of the many things I've learned from doing the podcast is that the best photographers in the world take what they do seriously, they don't cut corners, and they stay in their niche. So I'm trying to do all of those things and shooting lots of headshots and just trying to do everything to the highest standard that I can. And things are moving in the right direction for sure. In terms of the podcast, I'm loving putting together this new batch of episodes, but I am a bit busy in a good way. So just to let you know, I'll be releasing new episodes fortnightly for the rest of this year at least. That just makes it a little bit easier for me and means I can keep everything to a high standard. I'll also be launching some more Viewfinders live events with some of my favourite guests from the show, and you'll be hearing about that over the coming weeks and months. And I'll be using the ad slots on the podcast so I can always keep you up to date with the latest events that you can join in with. Well, it's summer here and I'm trying to fit in as much roller skating as possible right now while the sun's out, and you can see my progress on Instagram. Otherwise, running around after my daughter as well. She's on a bit of a roll at the moment. She's 6, just coming to the end of P1. That's the first year of school here. She's got an excellent report card. She was in a dance show that she's been practicing for months, and she's had her first ever school sports day. So proud parent alert here. She won both the running race and the sack race. So yeah, we're very proud, very excited, and very grateful for all the milestones she's hitting. How about you? I'd love to know what you're getting up to, so please connect with me on Instagram at Viewfinders Podcast. And drop me a line if you've been listening to this show, or if you have any feedback or suggestions for photographers who you'd like to hear on the show. Don't forget to subscribe or follow Viewfinders on your favourite podcast platform. And if you don't mind, drop me a 5-star review to help get this show into the ears of more people just like you who'd love to hear it. Alright, on to this week's episode. My guest this week has been on my list for a long time. Marlon du Toit is a wildlife photographer and safari guide based in South Africa. He literally grew up in a national park, and he's been working as a safari guide for nearly 20 years. Marlon excels at capturing the beauty and brutality of life in the wild, and his enthusiasm for conservation, wildlife and adventure is authentic and infectious. Marlon has appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, the NBC show, the Martha Stewart Show, and now this show. His photography and travel experiences have been featured in magazines like National Geographic, and he's also an ambassador for Sony Alpha photography equipment. If you're interested in safari or wildlife photography, you're going to take so much away from Marlon, but if you're not, you'll get a glimpse into this world through the eyes of one of the leading experts in the field, whose passion, dedication and joy for what he does is just so inspiring. Hope you enjoy this. Here's my conversation with Marlon du Toit. Marlon du Toit, welcome to Viewfinders.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of me and for making the opportunity a possibility.
No, you're so welcome. Yeah, so excited to talk to you today. Africa and safari is a big part of my photography journey and my personal journey. So just a quick fill-in for you. Regular listeners are going to be rolling their eyes here because they've heard this before. But my wife comes from Kenya. I'm based in Scotland. And from doing tuition, like I was saying to you before, I was doing tours here in Skye, Glencoe in the Scottish Highlands. And then the next logical step for me when that was going well was to do a safari in Kenya. It just made sense for my story because we've got the lay of the land over there. We've got contacts, etc. So did that in 2018. That was fantastic. Just the best thing I've ever done. And then one reason or another, and pandemic, I'd lost some momentum, and then the pandemic just kind of killed it off. And I think for that, if you're not out there doing it regularly to sort of drive the business and people don't see you doing it, you're not doing it, So I had to really let that go. But the point is, I've just such a place in my heart for Africa, and it's such a special place. And you capture the beauty and drama of the wildlife so well. I can't think of anyone who really does it better. And from your social media, it seems like even though you've done this a lot for a long time, you still have this sense of awe and wonder about the whole thing, which is so infectious. And so I realize we're finding you a really busy time in your life at the moment. So do you want to bring us up to speed on what's happening for you right now? Where are you at in this moment?
Absolutely, yeah. I recently started a business called Tanda Africa. Tanda is a Zulu word and it means to love. So Love Africa is essentially the company's name. And it's been a long time coming. I've been in the safari and photographic safari industry for the last 10 years or so. Prior to that, lodge-based guiding also for about 10 years. So really, kind of entrenched in the safari travel photographic industry. And I wanted to bring all of that into a company, that I can drive and kind of build my ethos and standard, just bring my experience into a company where I have full control and I can deliver a guest experience that's very important. I think there's so many companies out there today that offer similar experiences. Many of them are close friends of mine, and everyone does well. But it's nice to be able to put my stamp of brand and just experience on something that I fully own and am involved with. So that's what I've been busy just over the last year building into this business. We launched it informally and it started operating in December and January, and formally got to launch the website a few weeks ago, and the company's doing well. It's taken a heck of a lot of time. You do everything from content creation, marketing, social media, invoices, website building, legal document. It's just there's everything that goes into a business. But I've truly enjoyed the journey so far, even though it has taken a lot of time. It's just been an investment that's well worth it. It's morning start at about 3:30 or 4 o'clock every morning, and I go through till about 10, 11 at night, and that's kind of like a full day. And I've been able to travel, which is great. I've traveled quite a bit over the last 12 months, this year as well, through all over from Botswana through to Tanzania, Kenya, a few great destinations and experiences, quite a bit here in South Africa as well. And just nice to still be able to get out, for the first time. And what I've really enjoyed in my photographic guiding, I focus on clients. Yes, I really very guest focused. But taking up my time in the last little bit has been travels without guests. And although I love traveling with guests, I don't really get to focus on my photography when I have guests with me, because I don't enjoy doing that, and guests pay me for a service. But for the first time in a long while, I've been able to get out on my own, and I feel it's been great. It's inspired me to push the boundary a bit further, to get a few shots that I usually wouldn't be able to. And it's been great, man. The last 12 months have been just really, really good.
I was going to say, actually, I figured you'd been traveling on your own just to get things moving for the business. But it shows in your photography. I would say your photography in the last few months has been up a level for sure. But I can understand you have to put the guests first when you have guests. But being out there on your own must feel like a bit of a luxury.
It does, eh? And I've been able to go to some incredible places. And I've just come back from Great Plains. They've got a few camps in Botswana, actually in a few different countries, but got to visit some of their high-end camps in Botswana, and just awesome to see those places. But yeah, so just traveling on my own has been great. And I've never been one to ask people, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer black or white? Do you prefer color? Do you prefer this edit or that one? Or I feel like in our position as photographic guides and people who offer our services, you kind of have to make that decision and decide this is the one I'm posting, this is what I'm sharing, and this is why. This is why you can learn from it, and this is why you should travel with me, because you can get the same. And I feel like over the last 12 months, I've really taken a step into that more and more. It helps. I shoot with incredible gear, and I'm an ambassador for Sony, and they've really allowed me to use the best that's out there, in terms of what they're putting out. I have access to gear, and it does make a difference being able to get your hands on some special equipment. And yeah, just taking more than I usually would. Sometimes now I travel with a 400 mil, a 600 mil, 3 or 4 wider lenses, because especially locally, I can just lug it all across. Things I don't really, luxuries I don't get when I'm traveling with guests. And, my car is full of gear and equipment and sound equipment, and it's been a blast, eh? And I think it inspires you. It helps you to lift your level. And when you're out with guests, my next trip with clients will be in July to Brazil, to the Pantanal for jaguars, and again in August. I think by the time you get out with guests again, thank you for saying, it doesn't look like I've lost my passion. Absolutely not. If anything, I just feel more enthusiastic and more energized about sharing what's out there with people online. Everyone's been through a tough time with COVID, some more than others, and it's just great to be able to inspire people and to try to have people come out and experience nature. You can travel, whether they travel with me or whether it's just a trip on their own. Africa needs the business. Brazil, everywhere. National parks all around the world need people to travel again. And if I'm inspired, then my content hopefully inspires people in the same way.
Yeah, totally. So I like to go back into people's past. And are you based in Johannesburg? Did you grow up there?
I am. I'm based in Johannesburg, but I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Kruger National Park. So not in the Kruger National Park, but there's a small town. It's one of the entry gates into Kruger National Park called Palabora. And so I grew up there, very much immersed in wildlife and safari. My dad had and owned a safari company, and so I spent ample times in the bush on safari looking for animals, and so that's very much what kick-started my passion for what I do now.
Yeah, I read on your website, I think that you had a deep love for nature photography instilled by your dad at a young age. I was going to ask you to say more about that, but I didn't realize he was in the same business as well. So what was that? I mean, was that just a normal growing up for you, I guess?
Pretty much, yeah.
Looking back, like what impact did that have on you?
Big time, my weekends were spent in Kruger. Back then, safari camps like Matswari, Tandatula, Mala Mala, Sabi Sabi, those are a lot of the camps that he used to visit. He facilitated a lot of European guests, road transfers, drives into Kruger, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, exploring the different camps within Kruger, a few private trips. But very much shaped what I do today. I think often if your dad is a highly successful lawyer, there's a chance growing up that you'll spend a lot of time in the office with him, and probably wanting to, as a child, especially as a son to a father, you probably follow in those steps to some extent, because it's an environment that you grew up within. And from our side, it's very much nature. Even our town it's a small town, but we often have hyenas running around the town, and you can hear lions roaring from the park and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's just what we grew up with. And for me, a little bit more so purely because my dad had such a big love for the industry and for nature and photography. He was a very keen photographer.
So like here where I am, the safari sort of chapter of my career was so super mind-blowing to me, because for a kid from Aberdeen, I mean, it's the furthest place from safari, and I was like, how did I end up here? I was sitting there in the car just thinking this is amazing. It's not a career path here. You know, if you said you wanted to be a safari guide, you would be laughed at.
Sure.
Obviously for you, I don't see how you could go and work in an office after that upbringing. So was it always just the thing you wanted to do?
Pretty much, yeah. Working in the bush, working with animals, being in the field, hands-on. Photography was a massive passion right from the start. And I mean, even I started as a lodge-based guide, a safari guide. So when people would come to safari camps, I'd be one of the guides to take you out. I started with that early on, but always in the back of my mind, wanting to take the photography, the experience, showcasing nature a step or two further. Yeah, you say not working in an office. I work in an office right now, but you know, there's a glamorous side to what I do, and that's a lot of that is what people get to see, you know, on social media and the pictures and the images. But there's also a lot of hard work behind the scenes to make all of that happen, to drive all of that. You've got to run a successful business still. We've already employed 2 people, so a team of 4 at the moment, and that team will keep growing, you know. And yeah, it takes a lot of hard work to live the life out there. But I promise you, once I'm on safari, once I'm doing what I love, I'm in my happy place. The only thing missing is my family. If my wife and kids are with me, that's the ultimate. Which, you know, I took my kids and my wife to Marlon Pools last year. Took them to the Sabi Sands. My wife's traveled with me a bit. We're actually on our way. In 2 weeks, we'll go to Tiger Canyon in South Africa with my wife and I. And then a couple of days later, we go to Lower Zambezi in Zambia, also together. And so that to me is just being able to, especially under the new business, I can kind of make decisions like this and just take the family with. And it's been incredible, man. Diverting.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's great. So how old are your kids?
3 and 6.
Oh,
one might come running in here. He's a bit sick today, so he's at home. He's not at school. So if there's a child that bashes in here, I'll try to convince him to leave. But
it's okay. It's okay.
It's easier to get an elephant to stop charging me than what it is to tell a 3-year-old what to do.
So how are the trips for the kids then? Do they enjoy it?
They do. Yeah, I actually did a blog. I can share the link with you on a video blog on the One Experience to Mana Pools. And it's great, you know. It depends on the camp and what they allow for. I think more and more safari camps are allowing kids because there's more families that want to travel. Families don't want to separate and go on their own and leave the kids behind. They want everyone to share in the experience. So a lot of camps now offer villas or family houses or, you know, areas separate to the main lodge. You'll have the main lodge with 6 to 8 rooms. Then you'll have a villa or a house type setup with its own chef and butler and safari vehicle. So you literally arrive at the lodge, you stay at the villa, and you never, ever interact with the other guests, really. So it's great for privacy, or if you're on a honeymoon or a family trip. Sometimes the kids might not go on safari if they're too young. You know, like in Mana Pools, there's a lot of walking. It's a very big walking destination. And so the kids weren't allowed to walk. It's understandable. It's a lot of dangerous game. So they stayed on the car. I walked a little bit to do a bit of photography, but for the most part, the kids were on the car, in and around the car, but not walking too far from it. And so you just adapt a little bit to it. But kids on safari, it's great. It's awesome for families to be able to bring their kids out like that.
I guess most people who come with you, they're photographers. They want to go and do the wildlife photography. So I wonder if in a quick nutshell, you can paint the picture for somebody who's listening to this. They might be in the car. They might not be able to get to a screen, but it's a bucket list kind of thing for a lot of people. So paint a picture of what someone can expect on a photography safari. What's the sort of general kind of itinerary? You
know, the main thing why people would do this, join me, as opposed to just go on your own, you know, if you go on your own, you still get a great experience. You get a local guide that will drive you around. He may have some knowledge of photography. He may not. You know, I find in South Africa, the guides have a good understanding of camera gear, or better, whereas some countries you may not have that much. You know, and sometimes you're at the mercy of other guests on the car. So if unless you book a private safari vehicle, you'll probably have some other guests, and they may want to sit around and wait for the leopard to wake up, or they may not. You know, so these are things to consider. You know, if you come out on safari with me on a photographic safari, we always have exclusive use of a vehicle, which is the most important thing for me. If guests reach out to me, they want to book a camp, if over those dates there's no private vehicle exclusive to us available, I've never taken guests on a vehicle with other guests. We spend 3, 4, 5 hours waiting sometimes for animals to actually wake up or do something, or hunt or play, or cubs to pop out, or you never know what's going on. And so I think that's a big thing. It's just the experience and the ability to wait for something, to predict when it is worth investing the time to wait, when it's not. So I think that's a big thing on a photographic safari with me. It's if I run you through a day, it's up early. I make sure we get out at the right time. There's no guests who've traveled with me. I'm up there an hour before we're meant to be up there. I'm having my coffee, sitting around the fire. Guests start trickling in, and if I said we leave at 5:20, we got to be out at 5:20. That morning light is beautiful, but it is a short little window. And so, we get out, we try to maximize that experience. And one of the biggest understated things is understanding what the animal does, or where they move, or what time they move, or will it go up the tree? Will it hunt? Where is it going to come out? What is the direction it's walking into? And I've got 10 years experience as a lodge-based guide, where I've studied, understanding animal behavior, spending hours and hours and hours of leopard time, lions, elephants, buffaloes, rhinos, observing them, watching them, not with camera in hand, just truly watching and enjoying the experience of being with them. And all of this has definitely gotten me to a point where I can not predict every movement, but I'm definitely often a second or two ahead of the animal. So I can tell the guests, watch. And then it happens, right? But in that 2 or 3 second gap, and it's understanding what's coming, guests are ready for the shot. And also vehicle positioning is a big thing that people sometimes take for granted, is where that car is parked, taking in consideration the range of camera gear that's on the car. I always advise guests ahead of time. We speak months in advance, Zoom meetings and face-to-face time, talking camera gear, what they should rent, what they should buy, trying to prep them as best as possible for the trip coming up. And, you don't think about it much before, but if you come out there and you don't have the right gear, then it's a bit of a letdown. Or you look at somebody else and they're just nailing it, and you're struggling because you weren't told that you're going to be shooting after dark in South Africa, and you need a lens that can cope and deal with the light. And understanding that, if you have somebody with a 600mm and a 400mm lens, trying to figure out, where do you park, how do you position the car, speaking to the local guide in a way that they understand what to do and what's expected of them. Because I'm not driving the car, I'm sitting in the back, checking images, checking settings, vehicle positioning, and the guide's driving. It's a lot of I find a lot of foreign safari guides come to Africa and I wouldn't say disrespect the local guide, but it's still a human up front. And I find often they get so caught up in the moment of the photograph that the way they interact with a local guide isn't great. It's very demand driven. Drive there, stop, go forward. No, whoa, too fast, go back. And if you're the one driving the car and you got to change gears and you're in a cruiser, there's tree stumps, there's branches over, you got to think about so much, and you got a guide in the back telling you what to do the whole time. That's a challenge. So I understand how to work with these guys, and for a lot of them, I'm friends with them. I go back to Mana regularly, Sabi Sands, preferred guides that I work with. And so we understand one another. We understand the output. So, those are a few things to mention. And all of this plays into a photographic experience. If you travel with me, you know that I've researched the destination, more than likely know the camp and the guides we're going to use. You understand the animals. You know where to park. You know what time of day, what to be where, and various places. Trips are always based around either the best time of year or around a specific event. If you go to the Serengeti, it's great to go earlier in the year because the wildebeest give birth, and it's great to go in the middle of the year when they cross the Mara River. And so you're always looking for these events and the best times to travel. And ultimately, that all goes into a 6 or 8 or 12 day photographic experience with me. And the reward is that you walk away with a great portfolio. That's the goal. On-site editing. There's no shoot, go crazy during the day, and at night we'll review. because then you would have missed it. There's no point me telling you at night, this is what you should have done. I do it in that moment. I'll look at your image and I'll tell you, this is wrong. Try this while the animal is still there, leopard sitting on the tree. And so, I hope that answers your question in a nutshell. But there's a lot of benefits, and people often look at the price. It is more expensive. You pay a premium service, I guess. But I think it's well worth the reward.
Yeah, I think you've painted such a great picture there, and the value that you can add with the experience you've had. And even, like you say, things people might not necessarily think of, like interacting with the driver. And those drivers, I'm saying driver guide, it's not really fair to call them a driver, is it? Will have a lot of expertise on their own, and I think you got to work with that as well.
I mean, if you're going for the first time, or if you're if you don't have that much experience in the area, you don't know where to go, you don't know what roads to drive, you don't know what the animals are. And I find, and I've seen it across, sometimes being in the field when other photographic guides are around, or it's if you disrespect that guy, he's not going to show you all that much. I've been in that same seat with photographic guides when I was still a lodge-based guide, and it's not nice to be told what to do when this is the place you've been at for some of these guys have been working that same area for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And if you drive the same roads, the same area, the same neighborhood, the same animals, watching them grow up, and then somebody comes and tells you what to do and that you're doing it wrong, it's not that great. And I promise you that makes or breaks an experience. If you don't have that bond and that relationship, it just kind of sours the experience for everyone.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so we're there. We're on the safari with you. We're in the Land Cruiser, and now it's time to pick up the camera. Okay, I was wondering, is there? I found it's quite an intricate setup for safari photography in the camera. Is there like one right way to set up the camera, or would it depend on the subject or the skill level of the photographer? Is that something you could talk about?
Yeah, look, I try to meet, everyone's got different cameras nowadays, but I find that more and more people are coming on safari with pretty good gear, which is great. It's a good foundation to start off. And I'm a firm believer. I know there's a lot of people that advocate it's not about the equipment, it's about the photographer and your skill level. And that is true to an extent, but I don't know if you watch Formula One. Mm-hmm. Right. So you can give a Max Verstappen a bad car and he's not going to finish first. It's just he might be the best skilled driver, whoever the driver is, but in a bad setup, he's probably not going to, he'll drive well, but he's not going to finish first. And I find so often with photography, it's the same. If you give a skilled photographer a great piece of camera or equipment, you're just going to be able to extract that much more out of it. And so I always encourage my clients, if you don't have the best gear, maybe rent something, rent a good camera, rent a new current camera, and bring that along with you, because it's just going to help you get more out of the experience and you go home with stuff that you love to see. In the past, I've had where I can get a great result because I'm using a 400 f2.8 in low light, and my guest with a 70 to 300 is looking, he's like, but mine's so dark, I should have brought my other. And so I rather just force people, bring the best that you can afford. You don't have to buy it, go and rent it, but it's going to pay off and you're going to be happy. So for me, that's the biggest thing about the setup. It's good to have the gear and have an understanding of it. Many times on safari, and I think it's also one of the biggest mistakes, is people pick up their camera the day they arrive back in Africa. And so I always encourage my clients, take a week or two before. Photograph your dogs, photograph the kids, go to a bird park. Just do something with your camera in hand. Just practice those muscles a little bit. Figure out where the buttons are, understand your ISO, auto ISO, which mode you're going to be shooting in. And it's good advice. And for those listening, if you go to Africa, you can never say, I think in your head, you almost like want to build up to the experience. But the best sighting, the most intense action could come on the first afternoon. And there you are forgetting what manual is and which way aperture goes, and it's happening, and you just miss the complete event and you have nothing to show for it. And then you're disappointed and frustrated, which is also not great because you've just seen something amazing, but the frustration is there because you couldn't capture it. And so another big thing, even before the trip has started, is to have at least a basic understanding of your gear. Pick it up, go and shoot a little bit. Dust the gear off and get used to those settings again. If you're with a photographic guide, have a chat to them a week or two before, maybe do a bit of a touch-up workshop with them, just rephrase some of those settings and things like that. I promise you, when you come on safari and you can hit the road running, it is so much easier for you instead of always wanting to ask or not understanding what you're doing. But as for the setup itself, if you go through a day, I like to shoot on manual mode with ISO and auto. I think a lot of guys nowadays do with the camera gear that we have. And it just helps you throughout the day. It just makes it simple. And it allows you to focus on things that you usually don't, like the composition and some of the other settings. But get everyone set up on a similar mode. If they're not on there, I can talk them through the benefits. But I think once you have 3 or 4 or 5 guests shooting on the similar mode, it's easier. If one's shooting AV, the other TV, the other manual, it becomes quite difficult. And guests also get confused because in the moment, if I'm talking to guests, to John over there, and he's on aperture and Sarah's on manual, and I'm like, John, just change your f-stop to this or ISO to that. And Sarah's like, well, should I change mine? No, don't change yours. But, and it becomes quite confusing. So for me, I think if I can get everyone initially set up on a similar mode, speaking a similar language, it's very easy when I share settings in the field. And again, that if you understand your gear a bit and you have shot before the trip starts, I promise you, like everything just flows and is a lot more natural. If I say, underexposed by two and a third, then they'll immediately underexpose by 2 1/3, and they can keep going instead of double checking themselves. But having gear to cope with the environment, and just understanding your settings beforehand, for me, those are important things. And if I can get everyone on that page, even from a beginner to a professional, if everyone just has that base understanding, it makes the whole experience easier, and you can learn instead of taking a quarter of the trip to learn your camera gear again. And it just frustrates guests.
Yeah, I was thinking, obviously you set the camera up a particular way for, say, landscape photography. It's very methodical. You're not particularly in a hurry. With safari photography, like you say, anything could happen anytime. Yeah. And if that camera's not working for you, it's getting in your way. So I just think like the auto ISO, particularly with a couple of bits and bobs you can do with it, really make it happen for you. I think it's great advice to be well on top of that stuff before you even hit the ground.
Yeah. And the auto ISO helps, it makes you faster. It's because you can, it's a matter of upping your shutter speed, and the rest is pretty much taken care of. If you set the parameters and obviously the limits, so you're not shooting at 102,000 ISO when you don't have to, that definitely helps. But I think like you say, with wildlife photography, things do happen fast. You never know what you're going to come across. And I tend to encourage guests, as you go out in the morning, you don't have to be because if I go to the Sabi Sands, we leave by spotlight. So I get out super, super early, like an hour before actual sunrise. And we get out with a spotlight. It's a good time of morning to find line, to find especially leopard, because you can just scan an area and at a distance pick up on the reflection of the eyes. And there you have a cat. And then now you might have a half an hour to spare before the sun's actually up, which helps a lot. So, but in those times, it's extreme settings on your camera. You're often shooting at very high ISOs, very slow shutter speeds. And so I tend to talk my clients through the day, early morning will be on a slower ISO or shutter speed than what you might want to in your head, but it's only because you have to manage the expectation of ISO. So there's definitely a journey as we go through the day back into the evening. It's almost, you'll start low shutter speeds, end up where you want, and at nighttime you tend to come down a bit, as you shoot under spotlight in some reserves. But that's about it. There's a lot that happens in between, but I think from there on, it depends on the level of the client, their skill set. Some guests I have that come with me, they are more than capable enough to travel on their own. They've done 20, 30 safaris. They understand their gear, but they travel with me specifically because I'm able to see the moments, get them in the right positions, maneuver the vehicle, deal with the guide, and get them the shot, things that they don't necessarily want to think about. But they don't want me telling them, hey, try this or do that. Have you thought about this? They kind of just self-manage. And I respect that. I help them where I can and try to add advice. but the other people in the car might be very hands-on and they need me to help them with every single thing. So, I think from there, it's just you need an experienced guide that's able to distinguish between the people, meet them at the level they're at, and take them further.
Okay, so that brings me really to my next point, and this is what I really wanted to get to. I'm glad we got to here. You're out there, camera set up, we're ready to do it in the car. We arrive at a sighting. It's some kind of scene of lions with a kill or some elephants. I don't know. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But for you, right, where do you go here? What's your goal when you arrive as a photographer, apart from being a guide, but as a photographer? What are you thinking when you arrive at the sighting? How do you go about trying to create those? Because we've got the camera set up, and now we want to create emotive photographs of the amazing wildlife. Is there a way that you get into it, or is it just like a documentary approach? You just see what's happening? Can you talk a bit about that process?
I think in my style, I'm not really a super experimental photographer. But what I mean by that is, I won't have 3 flashes on either side of the car and trying to do all sorts of fancy stuff. For me, I'm a storyteller, so I love looking at the scene and I love coming home with a story. I think for me, that's what captures me most in photographs. And my favorite photographers, they tell stories, and I'm caught up in the moment of that scene. So I think for me, it starts the moment we arrive at a distance. I love photographing animals in the environment. I don't mind the close-up portraits and the tight stuff, but for me, it's just really beautiful is if you can perfectly capture a subject and give viewers a sense of place and where that animal is. I think more than ever before, it also ties into a conservation element, because the environment wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the animal, but more so than that, the animal wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the environment. They need a place to live. And I think if you can beautifully capture that, you capture people's imaginations. And there's a lot of photographers out there that do it very well, and I'm inspired by that as well. But for me, it's important. Before you arrive, I feel too often clients and guests the first thing you do and think about is your telephoto lens. You grab that, you pick it up, and you are tight in on the action. You haven't even considered what's happening around you. And for me, that's one of the first things I do, because the first lens you want to shoot on might be a 16-35. It might not be your trusted go-to 400 f2.8 or 600 f4. And that's an important thing to remember when you get there. Just, it doesn't take long, but look at the bigger picture. Look at what's happening around the frame. We were at this beautiful lion sighting in the Masai Mara a couple of years ago, and there was 3 or 4 male lions that killed a buffalo, and there were some jackals around, quite a few jackals, 6 or 8 or 10 black-backed jackals. And my favorite photograph from that scene was I shot on a 7200 from a distance, and there's this beautiful tree, endless plains, a male lion chasing a jackal with all the other jackals scattering and running out of the way. Now, before that, I'd shot closer as well, and I have this beautiful frame where the male lion just fills the entire frame and the jackal's running away in front of it. But that's all great, and I love the photograph. But for me, the better photograph out of that scene was just the scene where we pulled back completely, and you got the same action, but you showed all the jackals, the buffalo, the endless plains behind, the beautiful sky and clouds. And that to me is a scene that I just get caught up into more. And so for me, it really happens literally from the moment we arrive, and I'm constantly looking. But I find people need to think outside of that viewfinder a little bit more. Look at around and also look at what's coming up. Very often animals are walking up into a frame or you're with cheetah and leopard, and they love to climb. Even young lions love to climb. And all of a sudden, 100 meters out from you, there's a big tree, And so I know that there's a good chance they're going to go up that tree. So forget what they're doing now and get into position for that tree, because they're probably going to go up it. You get into the perfect spot, all of them up on the tree, and that's the shot to get. So I think it's just assessing the terrain, the habitat, where you're at, and working it from there. And that's kind of my process. It's I don't have a specific way of shooting or a specific mode or a specific exposure, under, over. I get there and I look at the story that you can tell, and kind of work it from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's great. I think you're right. It's so easy, like someone like me who's way less experienced, you want to start taking pictures, and it is exciting. And then you can go away after that really and look back at your pictures and you're just disappointed. So I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
I was wondering for you, because you've seen everything that everybody wants to see so many times, the big animals that we all want to see. When it's something, like some of the recent photographs on your Instagram, there's a hawk with a frog, it's kind of getting away, and there was the little painted reed frogs, the squirrel, the mama squirrel with the baby squirrel. I was wondering, when you've seen the big stuff so much, does those little things start to mean much more to you? Does that make sense?
I think so. And I mean, for me, I'm a naturalist. First and foremost, I love nature. So, I mean, you could put me out here without a camera in hand and I'd be happy. I just want my binoculars with me. I genuinely mean that, I think, so I love nature. I love being out there. So these things matter to me. I think as a first time safari goer, you do miss a lot of that because I mean, I can't blame you. If this is your first trip to Africa, you want to see a leopard, you want to see a lion, you want to see something eating something, the giraffes, you want the big stuff, right? I fully understand that. And I don't discourage people from pursuing that because it's amazing. If you've come away and you've seen birds eating frogs and squirrels and, like little things like that, and that was your safari, I'm sure you'll be a little bit disappointed. I mean, you can probably get squirrels back home and hawks and all these kind of things. So, but what I try and do is, especially in the beginning, it's great. Let's say I'm with you for 10 days and we have the first 4 or 5 days. We just focus, do the leopards, do the lions, and kind of just give you that wow factor and that experience. I find people then naturally in their minds, they know they've seen these things and they start noticing other aspects of what's around them. And then it's easier to stop at the hawk or the roller or the baby impalas or just, I think that makes sense, right? It's just, if you get that out of your system, the same with the Great Migration, if we go and do looking for the herds crossing the river, you don't know when they're going to cross. It's never a guarantee. You could be there for 10 days, not see anything. So we really focus on the crossings the first few days, get that out of your system. But then after that, there's a whole ecosystem either side of the river that you can explore. There's a lot of other animals there that aren't a part of the crossing. That's beautiful and great to see. And then you start introducing people to that. So it's like a journey. If I have 10 days with you, I'm not going to give you 10 days of leopard portrait, leopard portrait, leopard portrait. If I have 10 days with you, I've got to try and plan, all right, let's give them the wow factor. Let's bring it down a bit. Look at some of the smaller things, teach you how to track, teach you about stars at night and how this works, and like a little bit of stories around that, teach you about bush art and medicine, but then all the while building up and trying to keep that experience of leopard and lion. And I think that to me is great. But I find that as you come back for your second or third or fourth safari, for a first timer to go like to Namibia and look for desert adapted wildlife, it's not the greatest idea because you might not see anything. But on your third or fourth safari, you may not want to go and do the big herds or the big cats. Maybe you want to go into a place that's a bit more wild, where the animals are a little bit more shy, because you're starting to search for that wild element. Or you might want to go to Namibia, where you work a bit harder and you see a bit less, but it's the same kind of reward. And I think that's a natural progression. You'll slowly, as the visitor, also start to, you've seen all this stuff now, maybe you want to diversify a little bit and see some other places. And then you can come back, to the big stuff at any point. They hopefully always going to be there.
Fantastic. You've painted such a great picture of the experience and the value that having someone like you on board brings. It's so amazing. When I've been out there, you see people sometimes self-driving, like in a RAV4 or something, and I'm going, you're just not going to see anything. I don't understand, because our guide that we were with, was amazing, just seeing things that I would have never ever seen. And so there's so much value in that. I know we're talking about Africa mainly. I know you're doing trips to Brazil and India, and I just, for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on. But I think people can check that out on the Tanda Africa website.
Yes.
It looks so exciting. The snow leopards and the jaguars. Just any footage I've seen of yours with the jaguars shooting from the boat with the cat in the river. It looks like mind blowing. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, no, just brief. I mean, it is. It's an incredible experience. I've grown up dreaming about seeing it. It's probably the one animal that I've most wanted to see my whole life is a jaguar. It's just mystical, magical. There's this they're incredible animals. So to have seen one in the wild for the first time blew my mind, and ever since then, I've been back several times and going back again twice this year, twice next year, at least 2 times next year, because it's just I love Africa, and I know the name Tanda Africa. It sounds like it's only Africa. But, I go to places I enjoy and I love, and this is one of them. And to see the big cats in the wild like that they are magnificent animals. And then, on top of that, you'll be sitting on a boat with a jaguar and like toucans will fly over your head, or there'll be macaws up in the tree. So it's like another world. It's a wild experience, and the cats are active in the day. So photography is action packed because they base their activities on their prey, caiman and capybara. Those are active during the day, and they're just always on the hunt. So the experience and the photography is unreal.
One of the parts of the experience that you can't get through photography or videos is the sounds and the smells, and obviously the wind in your hair if you have it.
Yeah.
But those, like, if you're just there doing your thing, and like we were on a sighting with a leopard in a tree, and there were just elephants just sort of creeping by behind us. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
You can't factor those things in through the photography. Being there is the thing that you need. So
that's it. Yeah.
Okay, let's quickly go to the gear round.
Yes.
I know that you mentioned you're using Sony gear. Do you want to take me through your sort of camera lens combination? What comes with you typically?
Yeah. So I always try and carry at least 2 camera bodies with me. When I can, I'll take 3. Those at the moment, I have 2 Sony A1s that I can take with me as my prime bodies. One will be mounted to a telephoto lens, either a 400 f2.8 or a 600 f4. And it just depends where I'm going. So if I go to East Africa, where I do less off-roading, I might be shooting at longer focal lengths. I'll take the 600 f4. If I do Southern Africa, typically then I'll take the Sony 400 f2.8, always on the A1. Then I always have a 7200 ready. I know it's a go-to lens for wildlife photographers, and it is popular for good reason, and it's just so versatile. And Sony's just released their new version, the Mark II of the 70-200, and it weighs 1 kilo. It's so light, and it feels fantastic in hand. I've just been using it a bit lately. So that's on my second A1, is my 70-200. For the telephoto, I forgot to mention, I always have teleconverters with me, a 1.4 and a 2 times teleconverter. I feel it's important to maximize your reach. You can't zoom. If you have to come back, you have the 70-200, and you can always move the vehicle. But if you need to get further, you're kind of stuck at the maximum focal length that you have. Another favorite lens of mine, so for example, my setup for the Pantanal, I'll more than likely take the 600 f4. A lot of my photography over the last few years have been done with a 400 and a teleconverter. But then as a backup, I will take a 200 to 600 just to account for the loss of focal length. Mm-hmm. So that's the either 400 or 600 2 A1s, and then I have a 16 to 35. It's always a bit of a toss up between a 2470, 1635, but I do love the 1635. I think it's great for if animals come closer, herds of elephants, lions on a kill, nighttime photography with the stars. That 1630 to 35 is just it's an easy focal length, and that I often have in the daytime mounted on a A7R4, which is great for resolution. And if I have any animals in environments, that's always ready to go. And it doesn't have an extended battery grip on it, so it's small, compact, and doesn't take up too much space. So that's usually the setup. Usually three lenses and 3 camera bodies.
Okay.
A lens, just out of interest, that has caught my attention, I've been using it for a couple of years, is the 135 f1.8, not a traditional wildlife lens, but it is really sharp. And for South Africa or Southern Africa, where you do drives into the evening and you can off-road and get closer to animals like predators, it's really good to try that out, and you can get some pretty good photographs.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. Great download. I'm going to put links for that stuff in the show notes so people can check it out.
Yeah.
And okay, let's just move on. The next round is called double exposure, okay?
All right.
And this is where I'm going to ask you about one of your pictures that I particularly am interested in, and then I'll bounce it back to you to tell me the story behind one of your favorites as well.
Sounds good.
So I looked out a couple, and a few. There's a crocodile with a zebra's head in its mouth, which is quite striking. But I think I'm going to go with, I've got a leopard in a tree, but there are two options. There's the one with the Milky Way behind, and there's the more recent one with the two leopards. This is the one I'm going for. Now that I'm talking it out, it makes sense. So it's a recent sighting, I think. And I just want to paint the picture for people listening as well. You got two leopards in a tree, and one is kind of leaping over the other one.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that one?
Taken like 2 weeks ago in the Cylinder Reserve, and it was actually one of the better leopard sightings I'll ever have. I'll keep it short, but we were just Cylinder. You don't really see a lot of leopards, so seeing leopards was great. We found two. They were mating, both very relaxed with the vehicles, which is always the thing with leopard. It's the one animal people will go on safari. What did you not see? We didn't see a leopard, and so very lucky to have seen these two, and they were in quite thick brush. I wrote a blog about this. I can send you the link. And they actually went out, and as they emerged from the thick brush, they came up next to a waterhole, like a very scenic, beautiful, serene waterhole. And they lay down on the edge. There were reflections. They were mating. It was beautiful, and just really nice photographs. And we were about to leave when one popped its head up and was very alert. And we didn't see what was bothering it. We couldn't see. They had obviously either heard something or seen something. But it was enough to get both of them up into this tree right next to the water. And so the male was a little bit disinterested in the female at that time. So he just lay down halfway up, as you see on the photograph. And then she also joined him, and she would jump backwards and forth over him, trying to mate with him. So she'd jump over, run up the tree, lie down, come back to him, jump over, look around, come back to him, jump over again. She did it about 3 or 4 times. And obviously much to my delight. But again there, I think a lot of people would have made the mistake of shooting too tight. That was shot on a 70-200. And so many people will want the tight shot of the cat jumping. But I just wanted to give it a sense of place, rather be further from the animal, show the tree, show the skyline. I shot really low. If I'd sat down and shot on the vehicle where I was, I would have had bushes right behind him. So I took the camera, popped the screen out, and put it right down below, almost at tire level of the game viewer, and shot up at them. And it allowed the kind of sky to fill up the space behind them, making them stand out.
Yeah, so she's jumping through a lighter background rather than the darker background of the foliage.
That's it. Otherwise, it falls flat a bit. But yeah, that's the story. It was a great moment, a great scene.
Yeah. Okay, let me throw it back to you. Is there? You must have so many, but just something super memorable, great photograph with a great story.
The first one that popped up was a photograph of a lion called Scar, who is a beautiful male lion in Kenya in the Masai Mara. And again, keep it short, but we went out looking for him. This is about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And we went out looking for him. We found him with one male lion, one of his coalition members. And they were lying down next to the road, and there was a bit of a storm brewing. But within 10 minutes, that storm in the distance was like right on top of us. And I've never had anything like it. We were sitting in the car with these two males, quite sleepy, not really doing that much. And all of a sudden, we were hit by a wind that literally shook the car. It was like a rolling wind mass. I can't explain it, but it went from 0 to 100 in an instant. And then within seconds after the wind hitting us, the male lions immediately were startled by this wind, and they kind of popped their heads up and looked around, and their mane was blowing everywhere. Then came the rain within seconds, and with the rain came hail. And so you had this literally a storm where I couldn't even see the lions, and the lions are about 20 meters from us. They disappeared. It was white all around us. We could just make out the lions. And the one male lion ran away in a direction we couldn't see it, and Scar jumped up and ran across right to left. And so I managed to get a few shots off of Scar running in the storm, trying to get to cover. And you have like branches in the air. Everything is just a haze with this male lion mane blowing everywhere. You can see the hail, like literally the ice balls falling through the sky. And, obviously him having died, I've got a tattoo of him on my arm. He's a lion that meant a lot to me. I loved seeing him. Mm-hmm. And that sighting just stands out. It's a beautiful photograph as well, very unique. Yeah. And it just stands out as one I'll always remember.
That sounds great. Yeah, the photographs are the photographs which we go for, obviously, as photographers, but the experiences sort of mean more, don't they? Yeah. So, okay, I'll track that picture down. I'll put a link in the show notes so people can see that.
Thank you.
Okay, if you're okay for a few more minutes, I'm just going quickly because I'm aware of your time. But
no, I'm here.
Okay, last round is the quick fire round. I call it motor drive. It's like a photography pun.
Nice.
Anyway, so okay, you ready for some quick fire?
I'm ready.
Okay.
What do I answer? Is this a yes or no, or is this a?
Oh, well, the questions will let you know. Okay.
All right.
Wide angle or telephoto?
Ooh, that's a very good one.
This is tricky for you.
I love both. I'll go just out of interest sake. I'll go wide angle.
Okay, so I wondered if you would say that, and we think of telephoto for this kind of photography, but I saw a video of you pretty close with a crocodile, and I know you would never do anything dangerous, but that was definitely a wide angle shot for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, and I know this is quick fire, telephoto I love, but I'm more drawn when I get the opportunity to do it safely through the wider shots, 7200, 1635.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Not a quick fire shot. My bad.
Oh, it's okay. The quick fire thing is very loose. It's very loose. Okay.
Coffee.
Okay. This is what I'm interested in. Your spirit animal. Which safari animal would you be? Which one resonates with you the most?
Jaguar. I know that's going to go against my African roots, but probably a jaguar.
Do you think you share similar qualities?
I do. I think so. Big. If I was a jaguar, I think jaguars would work out in the gym. I enjoy gym. They're a little bit one track minded. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. I walk over things. I break things. I would say an elephant, but elephants are actually acutely aware of their surroundings, whereas I am not. I'm jaguars. I'm saving a space on this side of my arm. Scars over here, and this is going to be a jaguar betraying the leopard, and I'm very sorry for that. But I think I fit the mold for a big, brawly male jaguar.
Cool. I would love to be a big, brawny male, but I'm more like a Thompson's gazelle, I think. Just like twitchy and looking over the shoulder all the time.
Maybe a cheetah. There you go. I think you fit the mold of a cheetah.
Well, okay, that was really kind of you to say.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I love those Thompsons, though. They're just so beautiful.
They are beautiful.
Okay, so what's your favorite sort of low-key animal? The ones that people don't really think of?
You know what? I think I came across one recently, and a gerenuk is, they were beautiful, like bizarrely beautiful and strange animals. And
okay.
I don't know if you've seen them before or know what they look like. It's the animals with the tall, long necks, like really long neck. And they kind of stand up on their back legs and feed off branches. Okay. And they were just uniquely beautiful. Have a look at them.
Is it like an antelope?
It's like an impala, an antelope. Looks like an impala with a giraffe neck.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay. Links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Expensive lens cloth or the corner of your shirt?
Lens cloth.
Okay. Pro. What's your go-to emoji?
Sure. Probably the arm up, the muscle flex. I think that's often it's in there.
Okay, I get you. And okay, local music round. Favorite South African band or musician?
Oh, let's go Johnny Clegg.
Johnny Clegg.
Yeah. Have you heard of him?
No.
Oh, you gotta check him out, man.
What kind of thing is it?
It's so he grew up in Natal and he spoke Zulu before he spoke English. And so he started a band, Johnny Clegg, and with a whole bunch of local Zulus, and they make epic music. Johnny passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a South African icon, apartheid era icon, standing up for what's right and so forth. And yeah, he's just an amazing South African musician, and we love him very much. And his music is, if you listen to it, you want to go on safari. And I love Johnny. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. We're going to check that out. What's a weird thing I can find in your camera bag?
A weird thing?
Yeah. Everybody's got something.
Probably a beard comb.
Yep, that fits the bill.
That's probably...
That's for your beard, obviously.
Yeah, so, that's it, yeah. But I don't think a lot of people carry that on them. Yeah.
So, name one photographer we should all know about, we should all go check out.
Man, as I said to you, the first guy that popped into my head is a South African called Hannes Lochner. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's...
I don't think so.
Yeah, he's he's not as big on social, but he's done several books, especially the Kalahari and the Botswana regions. Okay. And he's just an great guy, excellent photographer, good friend of mine. And so, yeah, Hannes Lochner is probably the name I'd put up.
Okay, last one. When do you feel at peace with the universe?
When I'm in the bush with my family.
Great. Simple as that. Marlon, I'm so grateful. I've so enjoyed this, and it's you can tell I'm enjoying it, right? So
thank you, Graham.
Yeah, really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I think you're moving house. You've got kids on the go. It's the busiest time of life. So really, really do appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you reaching out and having me on.
Thanks for listening. Follow Marlon on Instagram, and if you're interested in going on a safari with him, check out the Tanda Africa website. Links to everything else we spoke about are in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, then check out my conversations with Marcel van Osten and Robin Moore. That's all for now. Take care, enjoy your photography. I'll see you out there.